We're in the middle of the India versus Australia series, and apart from the cricket, the big headline in the world of cricket right now, and I'm not talking about just the on-field action, it's the off-field action as well, and that is the sting, a television sting that has happened on the chairman of selector, Chetan Sharma. Now, a lot of things that he said, some is common knowledge, some are revelations, some you could even call them shocking. What we're going to do in this particular video is take a look at 5 big talking points that will save you the trouble of going through that entire long conversation, also have to read the entire excerpts or the entire transcript of that sting. So the 5 points that are making headlines, that's what we'll show you here, and also try and give our own perspective to that and make you understand what he's saying, what the background about that entire thing was. So these are the main characters that have come up in the conversation, and you'll hear about them as we go along. So point number 1 that we've got, and this is the biggest headline that's come, and the operative word has been injections, because Chetan Sharma is talking about players' injuries. So let me first read out what he said. He says some players just take injections on their own and they say they are fine, not painkillers. He specifies they'll need prescriptions for painkillers and they'll get caught by anti-doping agencies. They take injections because they know what injections will not be caught by the agency. So I think a few operative words that have got him into trouble is that anti-doping agency, injections, not painkillers. So these are the words to focus on. We can't say that yes. Again, I'll come back to that last bit, which is very important. So first, let's deal with what he said. So I think on the face of it, he's also busted a myth. Now, what was the myth in Indian cricket, or thing that was, often spoken about? The common perception was that Indian players feign injuries, fake injuries, because they don't want to play too much international cricket and they like to focus on IPL. They always want to be fit for the IPL, and that's why international cricket is not priority for them. What is actually said in the sting is contrary to that. So if you're an Indian cricket fan, you'd be relieved about what Chetan Sharma is saying. He's actually saying that no, players want to play for India. They're committed to playing for India. In fact, the other way around. It's not that they're feigning injuries because of an opposition, because of the conditions, because of workload, because they want to be fit for IPL, what have you, plenty of these, theories that come up. He's actually saying players want to play for India and want to play all the time. The problem is exactly the opposite. He says when they're about 80-85% fit and medical science may not allow them to play because they have to go through various tests, they still want to play. So the commitment is there. So I think that's a positive with what he's come out. If I'm a fan of Indian cricket and I'm looking at my players, instead of worrying about them missing international cricket or not being committed to India, I'm getting to know that no, they are committed. Well, they may have their personal reasons behind it, because as he points out that some of them are insecure because you've got your position in the team, and if you sit out because of an injury, somebody else might take that position, and that's nothing new. It's always happened in Indian cricket. One player is unlucky to miss out on a game because of injury, another one comes up, smashes 100 or takes a 5-wicket haul, and then he tends to become a regular. So players know that, and so even though it's a personal reason there, that they want to be part of the team, but I think in the larger picture, if you take a look at it, it's good for Indian cricket that they are committed. But the problem lies is when they're 80-85% fit, and yet medical science wouldn't want them to play, because what happens if you're 80-85% fit? You can aggravate that injury. That's why fitness tests are kept. But players will take injections just so that they can pass that test and be available for playing for India. Now to the second part of it, and that's the injection that's making a lot of noise. Now, typically, players taking injection is nothing new. We've heard of stories, Shoaib Akhtar taking multiple injections because his knee would give him problem, basically to make it numb so that he could bowl. Many other players we've heard of, whether they are batsmen who've had back pains, they've taken injections. Someone's had an injury, a broken finger, taken an injection just to play for his team or just to be fit. So that's commitment, that's great. In fact, a lot of people think that injections make their performance go one step up. No, it actually brings their performance down. What it does is it makes one part numb, and once it's numb, that means it's not functioning at an optimum level, but the pain is not there. So it allows a player to play. We heard of Hanuma Vihari, if you remember, in that test match. He had a hamstring tear, took injections just to cut the pain down, just so that he can play. So players taking injection is nothing new. But what has set the cat amongst the pigeon is the fact that he said they are not painkillers. Up until now, I was only talking about painkillers, medicines that make a part numb. Rafael Nadal, he won the Australian Open with a troubled foot because he kept taking taking injections to make it numb so that he couldn't feel the pain and could play a tournament. But he says not painkillers, and that's worrying. If they're not painkillers, then he needs to specify what those injections are. Then he goes on to say that they will need prescriptions for painkillers and they'll get caught by anti-doping agency, because certain painkillers, you need to show, they can come up in a dope test, but you need to show that, listen, I have such and such problem, so I've taken a painkiller. So they're taking some other injections, he says. And because he's specifying they're not painkillers, I think that is what has got people worried. Now they want to know whether they are performance-enhancing drugs. But he doesn't even say that. He doesn't, in any of that bit, says that they are performance-enhancing drugs. So we don't know. And this is something that probably Chetan Sharma could not really clarify in that sting operation, and he'd have to come out and actually tell us what he's talking about. But I think the most worrying bit here is where he says in the end, we can't say that yes, they do this, but we can't say that they don't do it as well. Now this creates a shadow of doubt on the entire comment that he's made, because now he's telling you that I don't know 100% do they take the injections, but I also can't say 100% they don't take this injection. So he's not 100% sure whether this happens or it doesn't happen. Should we then take his word seriously? Should we take it as face value? And I think this is what is going to dent his credibility as well when he says, because then it becomes a loose comment. If he's not 100% sure that they do it, and him coming out and saying something like this then becomes a loose comment, and it becomes a problem area because it comes from a person in authority. He's the chairman of selectors. It's not you and I who's saying something like that. We can say anything like that and that can pass off as gossip. He is the chairman of selector. When he comes out and says something like that, that has to be taken seriously. But now he says he's not sure if they do it, but maybe they do it as well. So that might be a loose comment and that might go against him. Now to the second point. That was point number one. Now to the second point, and that's one name that will feature in the next few slides that we've got. That's of Virat Kohli. Now he talks about Virat Kohli's attitude, and he says, when a player becomes a little experienced, then he feels that he has all the power, even more than the board. Then he feels that he is untouchable and the board will not be able to hurt him. A player feels that without him, cricket will not survive, but many big players have come and gone. So now if you take a look at this entire comment, it doesn't show Virat Kohli in great light. So what he's trying to tell you is that, Virat Kohli, he thinks is above the game, may have become a bit more arrogant and, feels that nobody can really touch him, he's untouchable. All those things doesn't, if I'm Virat Kohli, I'm not happy after I read this. Now, but the important thing is that's also his opinion. What he says here is not the gospel. This may be true, may not be true, or maybe this would be based on the experiences he's had with Virat Kohli. Maybe Coach Rahul Dravid, if you asked him about Virat Kohli, he might have a different opinion. Rohit Sharma might have a different opinion. That's because each person has different relationship or experiences with another person. So I'm going to take this on the face value, and he's entitled to his opinion. This is his opinion, probably based on the interactions that he's had with the then captain. And so this is what he feels of Virat Kohli. Again, as I said, that doesn't make Virat Kohli arrogant. This is just his impression of the man. Okay, now, but what's going to be interesting is if a selector can have an impression about a player like this, does it then affect any sort of selections, whether it's captaincy, whether it's selection in the Indian team? And that we'll get to a little later. To point number 3, and this was a very important issue if you remember, one of the biggest controversies in Indian cricket. This happened, just to give you a bit of a background. Virat Kohli decided to step down as captain of the T20 team after the T20 World Cup. That happened in 2021. And at that time, the report was that soon after he stepped down himself as the T20 captain, the BCCI removed him as the ODI captain, because BCCI felt they needed to have one captain in both formats, whether it's ODI and T20s. White ball should have one captain. Now, when that happened, the big controversy was Sourav Ganguly came out and said in one of the interviews that, listen, before we removed him as an ODI captain, when he decided to leave T20 captaincy, I told Virat, listen Virat, reconsider that decision. Don't give up on the T20 captaincy. But the issue blew up because Virat Kohli later in a press conference came out and said publicly that no, Sourav Ganguly never told him to reconsider. Sourav Ganguly never gave him an idea that if he leaves T20, ODI captaincy will also go. And then it became a war of words. Nobody after that came out and said, Sourav Ganguly never came out and said, he had said what he had said one time, saying that I told Virat Kohli. Virat said, no, he was not told. And this, for the very first time, we are hearing from another person who was in that meeting. So it happened in a meeting And now we've got the third person, not the two parties that were involved, a third person who's come out and said, did Ganguly tell Virat not to leave T20 captaincy? Saurav Ganguly had said yes, Virat Kohli had said no. What does Chetan Sharma say? He says Saurav Ganguly had told him to reconsider. So he's actually endorsing what Saurav Ganguly was saying. He said 9 people were sitting there. It's not as if it was only one person. So he's saying, listen, there were a total of 9 people. So, it can't just be a conversation between 2 people. So, my story versus your story, it can't be. There are a lot of neutrals who were there, and he was one of the neutrals. He confirms that Saurav Ganguly did tell him that. I was also there, as he says, as the selectors were there. The president was also there, which is Saurav Ganguly. So either Virat did not listen, or then I don't know, in which case he's politely hinting at Virat lying. So he's saying either he did not listen, so giving him the benefit of the doubt, or other he says, I don't know, why did he come out openly in that press conference and say the exact opposite of what Saurav Ganguly had said. Now, this will have a lot of impact on Indian cricket because there are layers within layers. Saurav Ganguly may not be the president, but they are 2 stalwarts of Indian cricket. Saurav Ganguly, Virat Kohli. After these statements now come out, the fallout is going to be long from here on. Now, so on Ganguly versus Virat, he also goes on to add that when Virat Kohli was asked to leave the captaincy, so what are the repercussions? He says, and in this case, he's actually advising the guys who were doing the sting operations. They were actually, if you didn't know, they were actually posing as filmmakers who were going to make a documentary about Indian cricket for a big OTT platform. And so he's now trying to tell them that when you form your narrative of the story of Indian cricket, they asked him that, was it clear then Ganguly and Virat did not get and Ganguly was against him? He said, no, don't say that we were favoring Rohit Sharma in that case. So just because they wanted to make Rohit Sharma the captain, they removed Virat Kohli. Was that the case? He says, no, don't say that we were favoring Rohit Sharma. Say that we were against Virat Kohli. Okay, so he accepts that they were against Virat Kohli, and that's not hard to guess based on what his personal impressions are about Virat Kohli. When the earlier slide I showed you where he thinks that it was a time that Virat Kohli felt that he was bigger than the game and nobody could touch him. So those are his personal opinions. So he's reinforcing that, and now when he's saying we, he's talking about the management that could be, the board president as well as the chairman of selector. He says, Rohit Sharma says that we were against Virat Kohli. Peg it like this, that Ganguly was against Virat Kohli. That's what he's saying. He's telling the filmmakers, you should peg your story like this. Rohit wasn't even aware. So he's giving Rohit Sharma a clean chit. He's saying, no, Rohit had nothing to do in that whole saga of when Virat was removed as captain. Rohit had no idea. He didn't even know who would be made captain. So Rohit at that time, because a lot of people said that Rohit, would have been involved in that saga and he'd be happy because he knew he's going to be captain. He says, no. Rohit had no idea what was happening. He didn't even know he's the next captain. Once that entire thing unfolded the way it did, which I just explained earlier in the slides, Rohit came in. So the one person that comes out looking really good based on what he said in the sting is Rohit Sharma. And he goes on about Rohit versus Virat. He says, there is no dispute because there were so many stories for a lot of years and media openly spoke about it. So he's dispelling one more rumor. Initially I told you one rumor about players not wanting to play for India, feigning injuries. That he dispelled. This one again, because a lot of time this was a given that Rohit and Virat don't get along. And he has actually come out and said, no, there is no dispute. This is just media speculation. Just 2 big personalities like Amitabh Bachchan and Dharmendra. Rohit, in fact, supported Virat when he was going through a rough patch. And when Rohit had a problem, then Virat also backed him. So they are big players. They may have big egos. They may have disagreement over things. But overall, they have a great bond. Now, this is also... why you need to really look at it carefully and why this entire exercise is important when I'm putting this forward, because I want you to realize this is one man's opinion. It's not the gospel truth. Why I say that? Because recently a book came out of Sridhar, who was the fielding coach of the Indian cricket team. In one of the excerpts I read, where he talked about there were a few issues between Rohit and Virat, and the coach at that time, Ravi Shastri, sat the 2 players down and said, hey, listen, you are the stalwarts of Indian cricket, 2 big players. If you have any issues, shake hands, work together, because only if the 2 of you work together, it will benefit Indian cricket. If you're going to be at loggerheads because of your egos, then the only loser here would be Indian cricket. So we know that certain, I'm not saying that there was any sort of animosity or they were, enemies, but there may have been some sort of issues between the 2. which again, as I said, insider like a Sridhar writes in his book. But now Chetan Sharma says there's nothing like that. But so all I'm saying is that it's one man's word against the other. So everything that I've just put forward in terms of 5 very important points are opinions of the chairman of selectors. So whether you're a Virat fan, Rohit fan, Saurav Ganguly fan, whatever, just take it with a pinch of salt or a bag full of salt, because remember, it's his opinion. Whatever he says doesn't become the truth. So stop trolling each other. If you're a Rohit fan trolling Virat fan, or Virat fan trolling Rohit fan, then listen, he said that. Well, he said that, but that's his opinion. I may have a separate opinion. That doesn't become the gospel truth. So remember that. And that's the one big takeaway from this entire saga. Now, what happens next is very important. Those are the 5 important points of the sting, just to help you understand things that he said. He said many things, but I've zeroed it down on 5. What happens next? I think that it'd be fair to say that the chairman of selector is in the dock for many reasons. One, why would he trust just whoever they posed at? Why would you trust anybody? Whether you knew him or whether he was a stranger, whether he was posing as anybody, and come out with these details. Most people, would expect, if you're in a position of power, not to divulge these things because they can harm Indian cricket. So that is something that he's guilty of. And I'm sure the BCCI is going to take cognizance of that fact, and an inquiry will have to be done, because you'll have to look into this entire matter, things that was said, now, because these are internal things, and you know how BCCI is very protective about things that happen within the dressing room or the management or in decision making. And once these things come out, whether they come out through a sting, whether it was ethical, unethical, that's another debate altogether. But once they come out, the person who's responsible for leaking these things will have to be in the dock, will have to be questioned. And I think BCCI then will have to follow that procedure, probably give him a fair hearing as well as the chairman of selector. And if they're satisfied with what he has to say, maybe he continues. But if they're not, then I'm guessing that his reign might just come to an end. I hope you liked this video. If you did, do give it a like and share it with your friends. And subscribe to Sports Today for all the inside news in the world of sports.